Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Phil, for the very heartwarming introduction. I've recently watched some of these videos when I was a tech entrepreneur, and surprisingly, some of the things I said actually became true, and I had no idea they would actually do that. But thank you. It's an honor to be able to sit next to David. We met at Harvard a while back. I was so inspired by what he has built. It's a lot bigger than a class. It's actually more like a movement. And you know, when we talk about Merdeka Belajar and the entire educational reform movement, we always say that it's got to be a movement for it to really take shape. Now, David, I have my first question for you, and I'm very, very curious. I mean, you're a celebrity. You've been successful. Yeah, he is. He's a celebrity, and probably one of the, if not the most well-known introductory course to computer programming in the US, possibly the world. But what I really want to know is, why did you decide to go around the world and do these products? You could have just continued to make your program bigger at Harvard, more students, more classes, or extend to other Ivy League universities, maybe do partnerships. Why did you decide to go around the world, and why did you decide to come to Indonesia to do this?
Yeah, no, well, thank you certainly for the kind words. I think early on when I started teaching this class, CS50, it was in 2007, and one of the first things we did was only, in fairness, make it available to students at Harvard through Harvard's Extension School, which is our continuing education program. But that same year, the iPod was becoming popular, and people were walking around listening to music, and also it turned out to be podcasts. And we started making the course freely available, really just for our own students at the time, because instead of being tethered to their laptops or desktops, we figured when they commute to work, when they are on the train, they could still engage with their educational pursuits in addition to wherever they were headed that same day. But it turned out in those early years that like other people started listening, and it sort of dawned on us that we were living certainly in this bubble there and had access to resources that so many people around the world wouldn't have, and even within the United States. And it felt early on just certainly the right thing for us to do, to just flip that switch and make what was ordinarily and by default private, but make it public instead. And it became for us very organically, very mission driven. And the fact that I now have these amazing colleagues with whom I've traveled here and elsewhere in the world, really to focus not just on putting materials out there in recent years and making courses freely available for students, but to really start focusing now on teaching teachers and decrease the frictions, as you yourself said, for teachers so that they needn't reinvent the wheel and create their own curricula and come up with their own assignments and prepare for their own classes, because the most precious resource at the end of the day is the human factor and the time they can spend with their own students. And so it's thanks to one of my colleagues, Bernie, who actually used to work here at GIS, who connected us to some of the amazing people at GIS and Indonesia more generally. And for us, as we emerged from COVID in particular, it was this amazing opportunity now to connect with students that we'd heard from online via Instagram. My stories have been blowing up with all of the students and teachers who've been posting online, and to sort of connect with those folks in person just makes it all the more meaningful, and hopefully then amplifies the effects of educational opportunities for so many more students beyond places that we ourselves go.
That's amazing, David. You know, when me and David first talked about this program, my first instinct, and I remember we had a bit of a little debate about, can we expand this to all the university students in Indonesia? How do we scale up? How do we get to thousands of Indonesian students being able to take this? And David convinced me that, okay, if we wanted to scale this, the first step and the best step is actually to extend it to teachers. And that really dawned on me at that point that, okay, this guy is onto something. Then we decided, but my first question was, are our teachers ready? Remember, we had that conversation? That's right, are you ready? Right, of course, you know me, I'm always too honest for my own good, you know? So I was worried. Are our teachers going to be confused by a lot of the material? Is the English requirement going to be so high, etc.? But you did it, you guys did it. Can everyone just give a round of applause for that? It's amazing. I've heard so many stories by you, but I'd like to hear from David. What has been this experience been teaching these teachers?
Yeah, no, It's been wonderful, and I know as Guy himself stood up, one of our teaching fellows who got quite the shout-outs. I don't know if you know, but he's been screenshotting the Zoom classes, and we've been seeing your souvenir photos and circulated among the groups, which I think has spoken to just hopefully how much of a part of a community you feel, not just with even the students in your section, but other teachers across Indonesia, certainly now back home in Cambridge. And I think that's an opportunity, especially in computing and computer science, where many of you might be the only teacher, either now or about to be the only teacher versed in computer science who maybe came from math or even came from being a gym teacher and has been asked to teach some new field. I think it's so important to forge this community so that you don't have to lean on your colleagues at your own local school, but you have an email list of folks you can turn to, online resources, so you actually do feel part of a community and have colleagues even that go beyond the more traditional boundaries of schools. And so cannot wait, indeed, tomorrow and Saturday as we get to chat with the teachers about the teaching of CS50, not the taking, to help offboard them back to their own classrooms.
I just want to remind the teachers that this is not the end when you finish this course. Just to be clear, this is the beginning, okay? You will have this big task ahead of you to be able to spread CS50 and how to teach coding and programming to other teachers as well. That will be what I require of you, okay? That's the deal. That's the deal. Only get 150. And hopefully, and as I was problem solving with David about how to scale, we discussed that hopefully they will then go on to become the teaching assistants for the next batch and the next batch and the next batch. So some of you will be able to carry on the torch to other people, and I think that's a wonderful feature of your program. What's the big goal, David? What do you see in like 10 years from now? What's the kind of impact that you imagine?
It's a good question. I mean, we, of course, focus on computer science, and I think in recent years, ever since 2012, when edX and Coursera and Udemy and similar platforms came out to make high-quality, hopefully, educational content all the more available, ideally for free, there's been a lot more of an investment, I think, in educational technologies and a lot more availability of resources, which is wonderful, but it's just not enough to just put it out there and hope that if we build it, they will come, so to speak, and students will find their way, because even with those freely available materials from us, MIT, other universities around the world, like there really is the necessity for that human component, because that human sitting next to you, looking over your shoulder, bouncing ideas off of them, helping you, in our case, find bugs, like that's what's invaluable, and actually having a mentor and having more of an apprenticeship model that we're so fortunate to have at scale at a place like Harvard, where we have me and we have teaching fellows and then we have students, but to amplify that effect has been of interest. But I think beyond our own focus on computer science, my own hope personally 10 years from now is that more universities will steer into this, not just by putting materials online, but providing and perhaps replacing the traditional textbooks of the world that cost quite a bit, particularly for whole school systems, but make available the teaching resources and the platforms and the auto graders in the case of STEM classes and the like, and really providing K-12 around the world with a menu of a buffet of curricular options so that good teachers can then pick and choose, make the material their own, and not just have to execute on some platform or some curriculum that they've been handed, as is often the case in the textbook world.
And I think that's what really differentiates all of these CS50x programs that you've launched around the world, is that you're also refusing to accept the easy way out, which is let's just give out our videos and let someone else do this. And really what we found during COVID is really the proof. Before this, a lot of people seemed to believe that online education that was completely asynchronous could just work like that. But we now know with data from MOOCs, we now know from 3 years of experience from home-based learning that you have to have that synchronous component. You can be remote, but that synchronous interactive component is so important, and you've really focused on the humans who will then carry the torch forward, and I think that's really, really wonderful. My last question to you, David, is I just sat here attending one of your lectures on cybersecurity. Within, I think, halfway through the presentation, I immediately texted my assistant to make sure that all our Zoom meetings
ministry
are
passwords.
actually, yes, end-to-end encrypted. What do you think what drives you, and what do you think makes your lecture so special? I can see it's very magnetic, the vibe you have, but if you could impart what you think makes your teaching style so special, what would that be, if I may?
Thank you. So if it is indeed special in some way, I'd like to think, and from the fact that I'm still sweating now, honestly, is that I think there's something to be said for exuding like the energy that you want your own students, or teachers in this case, to have, and sort of bringing to life material that, especially with computer science, perhaps even STEM more generally, can be, and often, too often is, dryly presented. And so I'd like to think that by speaking quickly and energetically, even though there's upsides and downs, and with that said, taking CS50 online on YouTube, you can slow me down to 75% speed. So technologies offers a solution there. I mean, this is what we try to teach our teaching fellows or teaching assistants back home, is to try to energize the class, because I think, having gone to school for 20 some odd years myself, I was just in so many classes that I didn't want to be in, and that were presented in ways that they just didn't have to be so dry or so uninspiring. And like education can be fun. And I think over time, especially in the US, I think we've just adopted this structure, and we go through these motions, and we've rather commoditized things, the schedule and the structure of classes, when it therefore allows us this opportunity to just be a little different by doing things a little bit differently from other classes. And that delta, I think, is an opportunity to draw students in and allow them to decide for themselves on the merits of the material, like, is this something I want to do, or do I want to steer elsewhere, as opposed to doing that because of how some topic was presented.
No, I totally felt your energy. I went from feeling really stupid because I couldn't multiply 26 times 26 times 26 off the top of my head, and then I realized a lot of people couldn't do. And then I went from being scared, engaged, but then like these are so pragmatic. You kind of brought everything down to the basic level, which maintains, I think, our curiosity without making us feel stupid. And that's really, really, because this is a complex topic that you could very easily make your audience feel stupid, and you never once did that. And I thought that's really amazing. And thank you for that quality of yours that I'm sure now will be passed through by those teachers. I think I wanted to note one point, is that this program came in such a fortuitous time, because right now we are in the process of rolling out the Kurikulum Merdeka. The Kurikulum Merdeka, the translation is emancipated curriculum, and what it allows is that it carves out big chunks of time that the teachers are now empowered to fill in classrooms. So 20% of that time that used to be just filled up with all subjects is now available for project-based learnings, of which teachers and the principal can decide to pick from a variety of themes, one of which is digital. There's climate change, there's intercultural and religious harmony. There's a variety of themes, and CS50 could very well be part of this project-based learning should these teachers decide to do them in their schools. So Kurikulum Merdeka really puts the power back to the teachers. Not only does it do that, it allows the teachers also the power to move forwards and backwards much more flexibly throughout the year. So for an elementary school teacher, for example, David, for the first time in Indonesian history, if an elementary school teacher wanted to focus just on isosceles triangle for an entire week, that's now allowed under the Kurikulum Merdeka. So batch kind of chunking, instead of just racing ahead to the next subject where it's half the class is already far left behind and will never catch up. So these are the tweaks that we've done in this new curriculum that has enabled teachers' creativity to be maximized, flexibility, and for them to customize the learning to what their children really need. So you couldn't have come at a better timing. Now, David, I'm sure the audience here have a bunch of questions, so I wanted to give enough time for Q&A, and you're free to ask questions to David and myself about anything you'd like. In Indonesian or English, I can translate to David happily. I'm a pretty good translator. So feel free to start the Q&A session.
Oke, terima kasih. Perkenalkan semua, nama saya Ahmad Munif, saya dari Cikarang, Bekasi. Pak Nadiem, terima kasih atas kesempatannya. Kebetulan saya bukan saya guru SMK di swasta gitu, dan saya tidak dari bagian guru-guru yang terpilih kemarin karena ada beberapa hal yang akhirnya membuat saya tidak register gitu. Semoga masih ada kesempatan lagi Pak Nadiem terkait dengan kegiatan ini, dan saya sangat excited. Sebenarnya sebelumnya pun saya pernah mempelajari tentang CS50 secara mandiri karena background saya memang kebetulan software engineering, jadi dan saya ngajarnya TKJ gitu Pak Nadiem. Jadi Yang ingin saya tanyakan adalah saya sangat tertarik dengan bagaimana kita memperkuat basic daripada yang tadi disampaikan dan di kurikulum dari CS50 sendiri gitu. Sedangkan kita di buku, kebetulan saya ngajar informatika juga Pak Nadiem di SMP gitu dan SMA karena yayasan jadi kecil gitu. Bagaimana kemudian hal tersebut bisa dideliberasikan kepada seluruh guru yang ada di Indonesia dan kemudian kurikulum yang sangat kebetulan saya sangat gemeteran, sorry. Bagaimana kurikulum tersebut yang dipraktekkan yang sangat mudah dipahami tadi bagaimana Mbak Prof Malan menyampaikan gitu ya, itu sangat mengena gitu ya, mendalam, dan ketika dipraktekkan secara langsung itu langsung kita dapat memahami dengan gamblang dan bagus gitu, kita langsung paham gitu. Nah, bagaimana dengan kurikulum yang kita yang informatika, kemarin saya udah baca bukunya yang menurut saya kok masih terlalu banyak textbook, dan bagaimana kemudian implementasinya di dalam kelas itu bisa lebih mendalam kepada peserta didik. Karena memang kebutuhan informatika ini basic untuk anak-anak itu sangat-sangat penting gitu Pak Nadiem. Apalagi dengan bagaimana karakter itu menjadi salah satu tujuan utama dari kegiatan Kurikulum Merdeka. Thank you.
Itu pertanyaan untuk saya apa Pak David? Saya, oke. So the question was, he is a middle school teacher, teaches what we call informatica, is the closest thing to think about technology, basically. But it's not, it's very different to what you understand as programming. But what he's criticizing is actually the curriculum doesn't really reflect what you've been teaching, and that we really need to update your curriculum. And I think that's exactly the right point. That's why we're bringing David here, to actually come and help the teachers and help us reformulate and reimagine what should informatica be, right? Because honestly, right now, for a lot of kids all over Indonesia, it's about using Microsoft Word and PowerPoint. Let's call it what it is, right? Am I right? Okay. And the whole point about bringing David here into this program and actually learning from how CS50 is taught is actually to the big goal that we have in the ministry, is that it's time, and I've been doing this before I became a minister, it's time that Indonesia stop being just a net consumer of digital technology. We want to also be a producer of this technology. We need to have, so whenever people talk about digital literacy, I love it. Everyone talks about digital literacy, and they always refer to some concept of people understanding, kids understanding hoaxes on social media posts, okay? But true digital literacy is the ability to manipulate the digital tools itself, to create those products, manipulate those products to suit the needs of the community, of the society in Indonesia. So my mission, and I think that's what David's mission is as well, is to make sure that all these countries are able to become producers and creators of technology, not just consumers. We're already one of the world's biggest consumers of technology, right? It's creating a lot of opportunity, it's creating a lot of problems. But you're absolutely right. Kurikulum Merdeka is a dynamic version of curriculum. So Kurikulum Merdeka is not static. It is a dynamic piece of curriculum that is actually very high level and very flexible, that gives the freedom for teachers to manipulate the curriculum itself, adapt it to whatever they need, right? So all these teachers over there are about to adapt their informatica classes in their school, even if they're not informatica teachers, right? That's the first thing you're gonna do probably, and to spread that seed. So that's really the goal, is to change and shape the curriculum with this. So no more of this old school style of curriculum being static and fixed and everyone has to do this. The new curriculum is dynamic by nature. That's why we designed it that way. Would you like to add anything to that, or?
I don't think I could top that.
Okay, all right. Next question.
Hello.
I'm not going to decide who asks. Can
hello?
someone else decide who can ask? Yeah.
Sir? Hello, sir?
I can't see where it's coming from.
Upstairs here.
Where are you?
Oh.
Sorry, the lights.
Yeah.
I can't see, yes.
Okay. First thing first, my name is Muhammad Raflin Andias Versto. I'm from Google Developer Student Club in Universitas Harvard, and lulusan pertukaran mahasiswa Merdeka batch kedua. Di sini saya mempunyai dua pertanyaan. Pertama, saya kan kemarin ikut pertukaran mahasiswa Merdeka. Di sini saya sebagai mahasiswa informatika yang bertukar ke Universitas Harvard di Sulawesi Tenggara. Saya sangat excited dengan materi-materi dan mata kuliah yang diberikan di sana. Tetapi para pengajar di sana masih belum ketemu esensinya pertukaran mahasiswa merdeka atau kurikulum merdeka ini gimana. Jadi ketika saya di sana, saya masih disediakan oleh buku-buku besar dan sangat tidak excited untuk melanjutkan pelajaran hal itu. Dan saya ingin bertanya bagaimana Bapak untuk men-solve problem itu, sama saya di sini kan juga mahasiswa informatika. Saya udah belajar programming dari semenjak SMP. Dan itu sangat mudah sekali untuk burnout gitu, untuk belajar tentang coding segala macam, dan apalagi teknologi itu semakin berkembang ke depannya. Dan saya sekarang target saya ikut bangkit untuk bangkit di mobile, terus belajar Flutter, sudah mastering Flutter, tiba-tiba diganti ke Jetpack Compose. Itu sih yang membuat saya kayak pusing gimana nih harus belajar yang mana dulu nih gitu. Gimana tanggapan Bapak atas hal itu? Terima kasih banyak.
This is a really fascinating question. So he is a university student who has done 2 different types of Kampus Merdeka or emancipated campus programs. The first one that he did is an exchange. So we have this program where you do a semester exchange to another university, usually in another island, so that we have different exposures. But the second part is a internship, not an internship, an independent study with Google to learn cloud computing, either cloud computer, Android, or machine learning. So 3 concepts. So kind of a perfect example of what our programs and innovation have done. And he is also complaining, David, about how he's a informatics major who has gone to this other university, and he's complaining about how the teachers and university teachers just are very textbook driven, outdated, etc. So I think from my response to that question, first of all, we're just starting with teachers. Don't think we're going to stop there. We're going to docents next. Okay? We are. David doesn't know it yet, because I've just been trying to push David to do as many as possible of these things, but we will get to docents or professors. We are going to, at some point, reach out to the young, soon-to-be professors that want to participate in this program too. And that's the thing, we're trying to find ways of scaling it. So not just teachers in schools, but teachers in universities as well, so they can properly introduce. You have any experience, David, with teaching university professors or faculty that you want to share?
We do. We've been working over the past 8 or 10 years now with folks at all levels. I can think of a colleague who was at Miami-Dade College for some years, which is a large community college system in the United States, who was similarly leaning on our materials. And the model he chose was to actually have his students gather once or twice a week at the university. He would, in his case, actually hit play on my own lecture videos because he felt, bless his heart, that he felt that I was doing a good job and therefore didn't want to necessarily reinvent that wheel, but the fact that he was there in person, particularly for a non-traditional group of students who were typically working part-time or even working full-time and being students part-time, it provided them with this structure. And so what he did in his first years was take on the role of a teaching assistant, if you will, sort of getting his feet wet with the material, getting more comfortable with the material, at which point he was very quickly more than capable of taking on everything himself, but he actually found that leaning on some of our resources so as to not have to reinvent those wheels freed him to spend all the more time one-on-one or in small groups with his students. And so that's just one example. And I think that the model, both at the university level and at K-12, of inviting teachers to participate is absolutely the right approach, and having teachers opt in and therefore having them self-select into the types of teachers that want to just be good teachers for their students. And they don't necessarily want to teach CS50 per se, but they want to adapt it for their own classes. And indeed, that's exactly how we've framed our own open courseware, is that teachers are welcome and encouraged not just to adopt it, as they might off the shelf, so to speak, in their first year or two, but invariably adapt it and make it their own and bring to it their own style and sense of curriculum, and just use it as a resource itself.
Absolutely. And that's really where we hope to be headed next, right? First with teachers, and then the next is with university students, and have professors come and actually help co-facilitate, co-teach. So that's really where we're headed. It might not go all the way to Sulawesi that quickly, but we hope it will in the next few years, right? So, thank you. I'm delegating. I'm not going to pick who's doing it. I don't want to get, it gets very political.
Thank you for thank you for opportunity. My name Des. I am middle school teacher from Bandung. I am in lower secondary level. I am also part of this program initiated by the Ministry of Education. My question is for Professor David. As we know that among us in this program, more than half is from another field, not from computing or not from informatics fields. Some person from social, some person from English, also mathematics. As myself, I'm from informatics, but on the timeline after I finished my undergraduate, I changed subjects to another field. So when I see you start from 1997, you initiated this program until now, it's always improving. I see you give example of passionate. So my question is how we become passionate in this field, in teaching education, teaching coding, in become programmer, because in our futures, many obstacles in policies, in our environment, in our community, not supporting us to go forward. So I want your advice, tips, or tricks, how we become passionate in this field, in teaching education to our kids, in doing coding always at the future. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and I can assure too that even as many of you are finding your way to computer science or CS50 several years after having studied some field yourself, I mean, even I was somewhat of a latecomer. As I tell my own students, I was started off life, funny enough, in government, and for the first 2 years of college I was focusing on that, and it was only because I took a class, it happened to be CS50 back in the day, that I realized that this was actually the field for me. And so funny enough now, just earlier today and yesterday, we spent some time with just as middle school students, and my gosh, like those students have computing in their curriculum like a decade earlier than I did. And so if you think you might be a little behind, I mean, even I feel like, wow, I wish I had discovered this so much earlier. But I don't think it matters like when you discover a field, but that you have that spark of interest in it. And I mean, for me, the form it took, like, homework was fun. For 19 years, I dare say, like, homework was just not fun. I was a good student, I think, by most measures, but I was a good student because I thought I had to be. But when I finally found the field that sparked that interest, then it sort of became this passion for me. And so what I would encourage in general is not necessarily to try to convince students to do computer science or some specific field. In fact, I think that's the easiest way to turn students off to some field, is to tell them to do it, but rather just create an environment in which they can discover their interests, or they can discover the intersection of one field like computer science with the arts, humanities, social sciences, physical sciences. And that's actually kind of the secret weapon of computer science in particular, is that it's just so applicable to so many other fields. And you don't have to do computer science for computer science's sake. You can use it as a stepping stone, a building block to go solve problems that are even more of interest to you in their own field. So I would just encourage you to help your students like find what that passion is and just give them the tools that they can bring to bear on problems in that domain.
And always remember, playing is learning. So however way you can integrate play into teaching programming, right, is going to be effective with, and this is not just programming, it's with any type of field. So remember that. At the end of the day, if it's not fun, they're not going to fall in love with it. Okay, so same with reading, same with math. It's got to be fun. Yeah.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Professor Nadiem, Professor Malan, and Minister Nadiem. Hey, I'm a GIST parent and software owner of a software company here. Indonesia's got the best programmers. We just don't have enough of them. And it's really hard for us actually to hire Informatica graduates, so I'm glad you guys are up on that. My question to you is, because you guys have sort of a theater vibe, both of you have a lot of energy and you're sitting in a theater. What we need is, what I think is, an Oscars for programming. Like, we need a goal. I mean, I know Minister Nadiem knows about this. When you set a goal, the Indonesian programmers go after it. They go after it in the most creative way possible. But there isn't a lot of culture, I think, in Indonesia to compete. And then yet, as a employer, that's what we're looking for, because we know that when they can try and even strive, they don't have to reach the goal, but they're striving for it, then amazing things happen. And I'm just wondering, how do we take that idea? I mean, there were salons in France that discovered Monet. There are other competitions and World Expos that discovered lots of things. How can we take your class, help empower the teachers, and then strive for a goal that can be recognized, because I think everyone else can benefit from that and grow the ecosystem. Thank you.
So I'll start on this. We created an entire entity, a new entity called Pusat Prestasi Nasional. The Pusat Prestasi Nasional is a new body that does two things. One, it helps manages and creates competition events all across Indonesia, across all fields. The arts, robotics, academic and programming decathlons. And part of this very small growing field that we're just finally talking about is actually hackathons and projects, programming projects, robotics, but it's still at a very, very nascent phase. And guess what the problem is with that, with scaling that up? There's not enough juries and guides and facilitators. So the biggest problem with that versus, for example, a physics Olympics, there's actually quite a few people that can help coach, mentor, and organize physics Olympics, but very few people that could run a hackathon. So, and they're all usually in big cities, right? So that's really what we're trying to kind of build. Hopefully with more programs like CS50 and other types of programs like CS50, we're going to build a cohort of tech-savvy community that can actually become facilitators for this and help us. So just to let you know, with the Campus Merdeka program, over 420,000 students have left campus to do a semester, like that guy over there. 420,000 have left campus to go teach in a school in the outer regions of Indonesia. Go join the Google Bangkit program for coding. Go join a tech unicorn in Indonesia for a semester to learn about online marketing. To go do some poverty alleviation. So all these people and a lot of the independent study project people, which is about 60,000 out of that 420,000, are actually in the technology space. From 60 to 100,000 are linked to a technology experience. It's a huge number. And our big hope is that that number keeps going up, and those are the people who will then actually start participating in these communities. Because you're right, I've been recruiting engineers here. I still recruit engineers here. The Ministry of Education runs 300 engineers at Telkom that builds all of our platforms, free-to-use platforms for teachers. Anybody here know Platform Merdeka Mengajar? Yeah, okay, there you go. 2 million teachers already use this app. It's a super app for teachers. So we're even in desperate need of engineers as well. So that's really how we're trying to slowly kick this flywheel in action so that the community gets bigger and bigger. Maybe you'd like to add something.
What first came to mind is in the US in particular, there are programming Olympiads and competitions that happen at the university level or independent level. There's a lot of websites nowadays, hackerrank.com and the like, where they sort of add a fun spin to competitive programming that helps the best of students sort of bubble up too in the rankings. And it's funny you mentioned hackathons too, because before COVID, our team from CS50 were actually in the habit of hosting CS50x hackathons in various cities that would really not competitively but collaboratively bring students together to connect and collaborate on projects of interest. And I think in the hackathon space, there's really an opportunity for industry and government alike. Like in the US, for instance, a lot of companies will host hackathons where maybe they introduce students in the first hour to their API, some feature of their software that might be freely available to anyone to use, but it helps to onboard folks by giving them a 1-hour crash course in the same, and then they compete to make the best app they can over the course of 12 hours or 24 hours with that same product with prizes at the end. And I think in the government space, there's often opportunities to release data sets, whether it's on municipal transportation data, weather data, water data, anything like that, that is just an opportunity for someone to explore and bring to life and help folks visualize. That too, I think, can be a catalyst for this kind of attention.
I think we've run out of time, unfortunately. I know there's still so many other questions that we need to ask, but please join me in giving another round of applause to David Malan, who has inspired us all. And please, and thank you, Gis, actually, for doing this and making this introduction and actually helping facilitate this program. We cannot thank you enough. That's why we're here. That's why I'm here. And so please, as a school and as a community, a very powerful community of Gis, please continue driving these kind of programs and keep knocking on the door of government to push it forwards. Thank you very much. Thank you.